off of mute and then turn on the camera.
Michael Coleman's coming.
We're rolling.
Is he?
Sorry.
Oh, okay, so
He was at the church hall.
we have none of our members are.
Michael, who?
That's good.
Oh, I know him.
Just wait for Michael then.
He was taking out. He's taking out the recycle stuff for the church.
We'll get to anything important anyway, right at the beginning, right?
Sure.
Is everybody with the
So do the roll call first. I was going to Michael. So Mark Doxer. Here. John Sasso,
Present.
John Parsons.
here?
Nora Bucko.
Here,
Ron Assini.
Yeah.
And Michael Coleman's not here as yet. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the January and February joint meeting. As Michael Coleman is now here. Entertain a motion to accept in the minutes are here. For anyone who, and as well as the agenda, there's copies as well as that. The survey there. Anybody need any of this? No.
I don't move your motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any additions, corrections, deletion? Seeing none. All in favor? By show of hands, since everybody's here. Okay, it's unanimous.
Do that now?
Everybody's here.
Yeah, yes, all our members are here, so we can, it's a little bit easier. All right, this next item on the agenda is continued discussion on conceptual designs for a new senior community center with dedicated space for 60+ population. Now, I think that was worded, did that come from you, John, that?
Well, and I think the piece that I think I added in or was the selection criteria, which I think we have.
Okay, yeah, now that we have.
I think this was really just intended to be a kind of an update on to the rest of the group of what's been going on over the last few weeks. Quick review of the last meeting that happened last Saturday. I can't even remember anymore.
no,
Couples, yeah.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
March.
2 weeks ago. I believe the update, I think Rachel provided the updated presentation for the different sites.
Yes, so when I sent out the email last week, I put the link in. Everything's on the Recalc website right now. There's just a couple of the formal meeting minutes from the meetings that aren't on, but all the presentations are up there right now. So there's been 3 community forums. One was virtual, one was at the coffee hour, COA coffee hour, and then the other one was the first Saturday in March. I believe it was the 2nd of March, and they were all very well attended. I think some of the feedback that I gave to BH+A and a few other folks did was just the fact that there wasn't a wide variety of ages that attended the meeting. So we're hoping that in the next public information center, information forums, we can get more of a wide range of people participating, since everyone in the community is going to be voting for this. So that was one of the takeaways there, as well as the gymnasium. That seemed to be a hot button item in the conversation. Folks didn't really see the conceptual idea of the gym. And so there was a large discussion about that, and just, it turned into a good conversation, and a conversation where folks were like, oh, well, you could have a big dinner there for 200 people. You could have a bigger dance. You could have a stage that the Delvina Theater folks can come in and give a nice presentation at. You could play pickleball. You could have pickup basketball. So there's a wide variety of uses for the gymnasium. And I think once that conversation opened up, it was a good one and a productive one. But certainly I'm still there. I'm sure there's still some people that feel that they don't want a gym.
Right.
That's okay too. So just general feedback would be great, I think, what everyone thinks about what they saw and what they heard.
One thing that I thought was interesting, we had done the straw poll at, the one previous to that and the one after that. And in the previous straw poll, absolutely nobody voted for the one on the Oakland Road. On this one, about 12 or 13 people voted for Oakland Road, and I think the big difference was during the question and answer session, nothing was said about Oakland Road. But in the first one, where nobody voted for it, everybody started talking about the ledge and the neighbors and this and that. So you're just gonna get a wide variety depending on who says what about what, as far as opinions go.
Our joint meeting, nobody spoke on nobody raised their hand for Simon's Way.
That's right.
Right.
So was that different in these other meetings?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think the straw poll I think Rachel had even mentioned this, that the straw poll results weren't necessarily reflective of like a real cross-section because it was somewhat meeting dependent. It was somewhat, so I think it was interesting to ask the question, but I'm not necessarily sure it really gave any, dependable value, I guess I would say.
I was surprised to hear how many people wanted to stay at Pleasant Street.
Yes, I know.
And I have a question. I haven't.
Maybe because they were sitting in the room at the time when it happened.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the latest stuff from Rachel. Did she show elevations of like the gym at Pleasant Street?
Oh, she talked about the gym height.
Yeah, she showed and I think it was in the initial presentation, she had, and just to be clear, and everything that she's shown regarding building has been like block diagram stuff. So there's no like architectural, perspective. But with respect to Pleasant Street, there was an image that showed literally a block on the corner of
Yes.
the gym, like right up against abutting the neighbor's house, and it was like flat straight back, and it showed, sightline height wise.
Good luck getting that back.
There was a question initially about should she continue to show the gym version in Pleasant Street? And simply for comparative purposes, apples to apples, she wanted to keep that in there. But I think if you pressed her, she would probably say it's a really tough site to think about putting that on there. And I think it's a tough sell given the constraints of that site. But she did put it on there, and that's the only picture I remember seeing. I think it may have actually been in the last presentation as well, hidden in one of the backup slides. So
I'll go back.
no, okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
The weather cut.
I don't know if I can speak at these, but
sure.
we asked her to put it back on there for comparison purposes.
Yep.
So it was taken off in the previous, and we asked her to put it back on for the March 2nd and ongoing. And she did.
So when are they, well, I know they have a timeline and everything, but when are they, and so I know they can't select a site until they've done, solid architectural things and cost analysis and that sort of thing. But is that design with all of them having a gym? Is that
So
gonna be that's what they're gonna base things on, or?
So let me, if I may,
Yeah.
just to take a step back. I think it would be well worth a discussion to let everybody know and reiterate what the expectation of timeline and decision points are. I think that would be helpful for this group to just, because I don't think everybody may necessarily have been at all of the ones and what the thing, so we should spend a few minutes on that. But to answer your question, I'm not entirely sure. I think, one of the next steps will be to do comparisons from site criteria. And I think to Nancy's point, having common things to look at least gives you that perspective. My perspective is that whatever we end up assessing, there's gonna be give and take about what each site's gonna be capable of doing and what ultimately will go there. I mean, I think there'll be a decision point about a particular site, and then, you know, based on a whole bunch of criteria, and then the back and forth will have to happen about the actual design and what really can fit there appropriately and how it's gonna look and what all these other pieces are, and obviously the way cost is gonna figure into it. So I mean, that's a wishy-washy answer, but I think that's really what's gonna happen. At least if I had a crystal ball, I would say that's the way the process will work. I would like to make sure though that, and not just me, but I think given the number of meetings that have happened and the presentations that have happened recently, that at least everybody is, you know, has a good conceptual view of what each of these sites really represent and kind of a little bit of the trade-offs that exist today. And at least from I do want to make one point, at least from a building perspective, because Rachel was clear about this, that the buildings actually on both the Simmons Way and the Oakland Road site are effectively the same. In fact, she reiterated, she said they've kind of made them almost exactly the same in this latest revision. And really the difference between those two and the Pleasant Street really is based on constraints of site and how much space they can actually move. There could be some massaging within that confine, but you know, the totals you're going to get there are in fact going to be smaller just simply because of the constraints of the site.
It would seem to me Simon's Way, you could build anything there. There's enough room.
Well,
And you could also have plenty of outdoor space.
so clearly the both Oakland Road and Simon's Way offer a bit more outdoor options than Pleasant Street. There's very limited space on that site. That, I mean, you know, you get the terrace out on the corner and that's about it probably.
But it seems to me that Simon's Way is huge compared to Oakland.
It's not a,
I'd have to look at the square footage.
It's different pieces in different
Yeah.
places. Right, so the parcel that they're discussing now would be utilized reasonably well with parking and the buildings that they're talking about. That's not talking about the parking lot that's behind the rink right now at all, leaving that alone. And we're really not touching any of the existing spaces. So could you reconfigure it? Conceivably you could. But what they did is they took the part right at the start of Range Road. So if you drive down, you turn right off of Haverhill Street, the rink's right in front of you. They took the spot kind of here off to the right.
I've been down there several times. I know what you mean.
Yeah, so that's what they're referring to right now is a space. They did ask us if we wanted to look behind the parking lot or at the parking lot as another option. And we kind of said, why don't you stay where you are at the moment?
I suspect if you overlaid those, it's not those, because it is deceiving because of the way Oakland Road is on the corner. I suspect that especially if you look at where the building's laid out and you assume they're basically the same, I mean, the core space is actually not that different, I would suspect, when you actually look at it.
Simon's Way might be a little bit bigger, but it's, first of all, well, you have other constraints, right? You're bordering wetlands in a big way. And they decided the buildable space, I think, is 2.1 acres. For some reason, that number is sticking in my head. 2.7, okay, 2.7. But it's, I think it's chunked. The bigger chunk that they're talking about, there's another one over here that's conceivably behind the parking lot, although that is leased out to the Reading Ice Arena currently. So that would require a change in lease or something. And then there was even discussion of moving the ball field. Potentially, if that made sense. But that, I think, is bigger than what we're talking about for a center. I think that's more a discussion of how to utilize all of Simon's Way.
Right.
That's how you'd probably have that discussion.
Do we know, has anybody asked the question if Pleasant Street building can actually be altered?
Right, historically,
They would thought to look into that.
right,
Because I think
that's,
if that's a non-starter, why even consider it?
So typically, you.
I don't understand the
Constraint.
rules. I don't know the rules,
Yeah.
so, but
So you need approvals and certain things have to stay.
yeah,
And I'm not remembering what they are exactly. I don't know if you remember, but there are certain things that have to stay, period.
not an
And-
issue, right?
But the notion of doing things can happen with approval.
Okay,
Approval is not guaranteed.
okay.
But it's
Okay.
possible to do, there's not something that says you can't touch it.
Yes, it's the exterior of the
problem would be
building.
is
You can gut
typically
the
the look-
inside of the building, but you
Right.
can't touch the
The
exterior.
problem would be is that if you change it so that you have the gym and the parking lot, that's gonna dwarf the actual historic part. of it. That might be a
That's my
problem.
point. If you add stuff to the outside of the building, is that allowed? Because now it's not a historical site anymore. Building may be, but the building's gonna be consumed by this large structure around it.
It's probably worth exploring further, is the quick answer to that.
Yeah, but I think it should be done ahead of time so we don't waste time on that and we can get down to maybe it's 2 sites that we start looking at versus the 3rd site.
Because there was, somebody raised the issue at that first joint meeting, the COA and ReCal, about, I thought, you can't touch the wall. You can't have something that's actually on the wall. But then I'm thinking the library, that's a historic building and that does. So,
Yeah, I think at the high level, it's doable.
Yeah.
At the specific level, have to do some stuff. And obviously, historic commission has to be very.
Who does that? Who do we go ask
So
to?
Rachel and Matt did meet with someone on the historical commission, so they can give a little bit more background on it. So the initial conversation was that it was a positive conversation.
Okay.
The initial conversation. I don't know how far it got. But I can ask Matt for more information on.
Positive as
Go ahead.
it's a possibility.
Yes, that it is a possibility. Yes.
I mean, if you look at the way that site presentation is, the core of the building structure has been kept.
Yes,
I suspect that was intentional.
yeah, sure.
You know,
And-
probably based on that particular issue.
BH Plus A, one of the reasons why we hired them is because they have this vast experience, including working on
With,
Yeah.
with historical buildings.
it's good.
Do we have any other discussions on the sites as they are themselves before we move on to the next agenda, or?
I'll also share my screen from the last recent presentation, so you guys can look at the sites. If that's helpful. So this is the Oakland Road site. The Pleasant Street site. And the Simon's Way site, and as Mark stated, there was also a little bit of movement on this particular location, which I particularly liked, but I don't know how everyone else would feel about it, but she just simply shifted the building right here, place it facing this way. And then the parking lot became here, so that way if you're in a recreational place, you're playing pickleball, you can easily access the pickleball courts from the parking lot and still get to the building. So she just switched that last week and I thought that was a pretty good idea. I don't know how everyone feels about that change.
I think her comment at the time was the reason she put the site the way it was there was she was questioning the road.
Oh, right, yeah.
But then she did, to your point, she did say that she felt the switch to put the parking lot basically between the building and the other outdoor activities felt like a better approach on the site. But that still left the question of whether or not, you know, there'd be other issues with the road that they'd have to contend with.
Did that get resolved about the road?
You know, that's my knowledge, whether it's a private road or whatever, I don't know, it may be a private way, I have a feeling it is. So
The
that's-
town owns the land on both sides. That's
Yeah, exactly.
the private way, except that you own it all.
Around it, I think. And it's too narrow. I mean, to do any kind of development on that site requires a lot of change in infrastructure. The roadway, all the utilities, all that stuff would have to change pretty dramatically.
Unless you made that road a one-way road that.
Yeah, so it would be,
Went out.
maybe it's a public way and you could do a circle.
Yeah.
Go in one way and out the other, something like that.
That's okay.
Actually, moving the building closer makes the utility question easier.
Right.
Right,
Because Now you don't have the additional run-in, under the parking lot or
All that.
whatever. So if you move it closer, you make it a little easier, but you might, to your point, gain some infrastructure issues with the road, but half dozen at one, six of another, I think you're stuck either way.
Chris, you have your hand up?
Oh, sorry, Chris.
I do. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I know, Rachel had switched, Simon's Way. I don't know, I haven't heard anything because Range Road is private. And she had widened that road in the new model, and I hadn't heard anything on that. And also she had tweaked, Oakland Road, a little bit too. She changed where the driveway went in and where the pickleball courts were. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that.
Yep. Yeah, so in Oakland,
I'd just like to.
Yeah, this got adjusted. She moved the entranceway across from the entrance to the parking lot for the pack,
Mhm.
so that it was more better sight line for coming in and out. But I think the pickleball courts stayed they've actually moved down a little bit, I think, maybe.
Yes, further away from the neighbors.
Yeah.
Weren't they originally on the other side?
Yes.
They were.
They're originally on the other side, but then they moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not,
So
I've
that's,
looked at the site. I'm not convinced that that's far enough away.
From the house up
Houses.
Yeah, we'd have to do some treatment if we ever did that.
And I guess that could be,
Masks.
that could be bocce
People are aware.
or
What's treatment?
other outdoor
Right,
activity.
the pickleball courts could be, let's say, at Simon's, and
Yeah.
the center could be here.
I mean-
Yeah,
You might want to have pickleball courts near the senior center, and you would have to put up some sound fencing along there. That's, at the back of that property line, you would have to put up
Wherever we go, basically, we have to talk to all the neighbors anyway and
yeah, I mean,
listen and see what their concerns are.
and they won't want pickleball courts there. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, you have the most experience with.
well, that's why I said, at least you could have them in Simon's Way, because you've got a rifle range, you can deal with pickleball.
There's
And just
also
so-
some courts at the high school, not far from Oakland Road, just on the other side of the high school. So
Yeah, the
good
paved
to keep that
courts.
in mind.
But
They don't use them.
By Rise
Those are
Preschool.
blown away.
yeah, they'll go away in Birch Meadow Phase 2. And just to Mark's point too about the neighbors, I did let him know, and I think maybe John Sasso, but we did send out letters to all of the abutters at Pleasant Street, at Simon's Way, at Oakland Road.
Oh,
So to just engage them, told them about the upcoming community forums, told them where to get the information, told them to contact me if they had any questions. So they have been notified, and we'll probably notify them again when the next public meeting.
Has anybody
Comes about
called
too.
you or?
Yeah, we did have one person reach out. He gave me a call, and then I invited him to one of the forums, and he came and he participated and he spoke. He's an abutter by the Pleasant Street location, and really, he was gonna be a senior soon, and he really liked the fact that he could walk to the center of Pleasant Street, so he was in favor of that location, but yeah, it's good conversation, friendly.
And we heard from one of the neighbors up the hill by the water tower, Oakland Road.
Oh, great. Do you remember what feedback they gave?
Just concerned about doing anything in that space.
That's what Ben Nichols said years ago. That site could never be built on. Ben Nichols was a pretty sharp guy.
Really good site.
it's a tough,
Anything.
Yeah.
it's a tough site. It has a lot of challenges in the site itself, but then it also has challenges because of its proximity to the schools and everything else. So, I mean,
It's got pros and cons.
none of these sites, as we know, are perfect. I think that's the challenge that we're gonna have to face there.
True.
And I mean, I like the idea of, to think about these, we've been thinking about them as individual sites, but I think our charter is to think about this as services to the community and how we meet all of that appropriately and what pieces really make sense to do, because yeah, I think we're gonna get some other constraints, particularly financial, that are gonna, you know, assess how much of this we're gonna be able to do and where. And so I think the biggest question is bang for the buck.
Oh, whatever we do, whatever our charter is, it's seniors first, if I remember how it was written.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other,
So
So
do we want to move on to?
that's what I was
criteria?
gonna say. Does
Maybe-
anybody else have
If
anything?
it's, if it's okay though, just because before we jump into it, I know people had asked about process and where we're heading. Can we maybe take a minute to go through that first? So we're not just jumping into this as a, why are we doing this? And wait at this.
Sure. Process, it means far as
No, not
overall.
overall. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
The whole project kind of, do you want to tag team this a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead. You can start.
So we had hoped that there could be some kind of an update to town meeting that could go into the warrant. That has to be done in a week. It's gonna happen. We just found out that the deadline is the 20-something of March to get that done. So that's tight. To have something that at least shows the spaces, I think is very doable and what's under consideration that way. To maybe even start looking at some evaluation criteria, maybe that's possible too. We heard from BH+A that by the end of the month, am I right? They're gonna have cost estimates?
Yes.
First cost estimates.
The
Oh, wow.
21st.
20, we could.
Yep, which is next Thursday.
Okay,
No,
the 21st.
the 21st, and then the following week would be a presentation to recap against COA.
So
She said she would have the costs, but she wouldn't release them until
that
they
meeting,
had gone over it.
right. So the notion, I think, of including much of that information into the warrant for town meeting is probably a bad idea and probably not possible. So I think that's done.
You definitely wouldn't want to have the cost.
If it was gonna be more of an April thing, maybe. One potential idea would be to ask the town moderator if it's possible to put up some tables outside of town meeting and show what these look like, show the drawings, just so people can see what it is. And then in the warrant, there'd be a little bit of information on it as well. And if they had questions, obviously town meeting members could ask questions at that point also. Then the question starts to become, okay, then what? And that's where I think it gets more exciting. We need to find a way to focus all of that discussion, think about the trade-offs, and then I think get together as us, as Recalc, together with the council, together with whoever else we feel needs to be engaged at that point to make a recommendation to the select board of the option that's preferred by the group. And then to let the select board bang that around and see, do they agree? Do they have questions? Should I have questions? But we're kind of what happens. Then assuming that there is some unity on that, then we have to talk about how to take it to the community, which would be first a town meeting for approval and then second to the voters for an election. So this town meeting, the end of April, that will go. Then the next one is in November. It may make sense to have a special town meeting, to call for a special town meeting once this was all organized. And maybe that's September-ish, something like that, plus or minus, who knows? To have it there, it has to pass that, and then I think it's 60-something days after that to have an election. I don't think we can make the November regular election. I think it would have to be a special election. In somewhat the same time frame, although a little bit later, is going to be the school project. But I think one of the things that's really important is to make sure everybody knows everything that's coming down the pike and knows what it is and why and how and kind of figures their stuff out. And I think our goal is there are two core projects that this community needs to invest in. I don't think that this, I don't think it's been discussed to try to put them together. I don't think it makes sense to put them together because of the reimbursement structures and a bunch of other reasons. But the voters and town meeting need to understand, you know, here's a project that's a senior center, here's a project that's a school. And plus or minus a year, same time frame. So how did I do, John?
Yeah, no, that's good. I was gonna add just a couple quick things. One, relative to just more detailed on the process side, I think the lead up to the recommendation is this next runway that we have to, starting with criteria and meetings with COA, with staff, with recalc, with getting some more feedback from the community. We really need to figure out how we get to that point. How do we get to the recommendation? And to Mark's point, I don't necessarily, well, let me take that back. So town meeting is effectively what, the last week in April? Or the,
Yes.
So
22.
we were thinking about May 7th, if I remember correctly, as the Board of Selectmen meeting where we would present our recommendation.
I don't think that's gonna work.
Okay, well, somewhere in the May timeframe, we were thinking Board of Selectmen presentation. And so that does mean that prior to that, we're gonna have some cogent arguments put together and some backup, and that's probably gonna be right around town meeting time, I would expect. So leading up to that effort is all the things we've been talking about now, is to take the collective information and try to come up with a way. And so what BHNA presented at the last meeting we had with them was a proposal for how they would assess criteria. It was an example. It wasn't let's be clear, it was just an example. It was not this is the end all. This is how we could do it, and tried to address not just the pure rankings, but also a little bit of weightings as well. And I thought that they did a reasonable job kind of integrating that. And I think it's worth at least sharing that with folks so they can understand what this then could turn into. And actually, their recommendation, even though I think there's 30 some odd pieces on this, their recommendation, if I remember correctly, was to really kind of narrow it down to about a dozen or so concatenated criteria. So that, we weren't trying to sit there and nitty gritty, pick something out, but have a better view of how each of those things would interplay with one another. And I thought that was a better, as much as, I'm the engineer and like to see the details. I think, from a communication perspective, I think it was a good approach that they advocated for. So,
And one more thing. So we need to develop our own process for how to take this forward and get it done. The school building process is very formal, and it has gates of approval, and it has people who look over it, and all that is.
Status set it all up, right?
Yeah. So boom, boom, boom. We don't have that. So we need to kind of figure it out ourselves. Clearly, the permanent building committee needs to get engaged ASAP in what we're talking about here. At least to see what we're thinking about. Maybe they'll have input on the 3 sites. And then once we form a building committee, which will be a requirement for any project over, I think, $2 million, is that the permanent building committee is essentially the agency that's going to run it for the town. What the schools have done is they created a committee that is all the permanent building committee members, and then there's like a member of the select board, a member or 2 of the school committee, and maybe 1 or 2 others. But that's the building. Let's get it done. We need to do that. We also need to figure out what's our process to kind of get this going. And then I think the more helpful we can be to the select board with, here's how it should go, and then obviously get the guidance from the select board. I think that's the most helpful way to get it done. And I think getting to town meeting, even, just seeing it in the warrant and seeing, it's in discussion, yada, yada, I think that's really, really helpful. It's really important.
So just to circle back on that last thing about town meeting, because of the time frame, we're kind of crunched.
Yeah.
I would recommend that we just, take what we have today and kind of package it up and summarize it and say, here's what we've done, here's what the HNA has done, here's the basic process and timeline. I mean, I think that's really all we're going to be able to do. And maybe it's a couple slides, maybe it's a paragraph or 2 that goes with it, but I would not try at this point to to flush every little piece of that out for town meeting, because I don't think it's gonna be, I think we're not gonna have enough knowledge over the next week or less to make that happen. And I don't think town meeting is necessarily gonna, other than seeing that it's there, and maybe if we did have the ability to put some stuff out, at the meeting in the hall, that would actually be
that's
even
possible.
more valuable.
I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I think we can approach the town moderator and ask.
So what would we have then? Would be some of the slides from BHNA?
Slides, you could do the full-sized drawings rather than trying to see it on the screen. Whatever's gonna go into the warrant is on an 8.5 by 11 sheet, per, so. I think seeing the real stuff is interesting. It'd be a chance potentially to have people at the tables so that they could collect feedback from town meeting members or questions they have. Maybe that's a way to do that. Maybe the other thing we could add is just the notion of additional public input sessions and a little bit on the timeline if we can, just to make people understand that it's.
Right, can we take the BHNA timeline as far as their side of it? And then have the overlay, what we were talking about, the overall process? Will we be able to spell that out?
So, I don't know if this is the latest and greatest, but we could take something like this and simplify it pretty dramatically in terms of what's going on, but just to show people, most important might be the month. Here's what's gonna happen this month, this month, this month.
That makes sense? Questions?
Yeah.
The Council on Aging has really been working to get community, knowledge out there, to get knowledge of this out to the community. And one of the things that we will be hosting in April, off the top of my head, of course, I can't remember the dates, is we have, 2 open houses scheduled for April to happen at the Pleasant Street Center.
April 11th.
April 11th is one, and the other one is a Saturday.
I thought it was May 15th was the next one.
No, I think it's April 27th, and that's a Saturday.
I didn't write that one down, I guess.
Yeah,
I thought
so,
it was May 15th too.
no, there were 2 in April, 1 in May, and, just so that people know, so, and it's around, it's in April when the town meeting is there. We're going to do outreach to all the town meeting members, as well as all of the town committees that, like the finance committee and the building committee, and for them to be able to come in to Pleasant Street Center and get a tour. And we'll have it set up with posters, and each room will have a tour guide to be able to answer questions. So that's one of the things that we'll be doing around town meetings.
I think it'd be good also to have whatever we have for town meeting, maybe if you could have something at the library. Because if you're talking about people of all ages and everything else, that's the one place in town where people are gonna be flowing through. So that might be a good place.
We might be able to take some of the visuals that we put together for the tour.
Yeah.
And move them up to the library.
What's the purpose of the meeting? Having those community meetings? Just talk about what's the purpose?
It's to provide town meeting members with an opportunity, if they've never been to the Pleasant Street Center, so that they can see what it looks like. We'll be playing the video that we made there, and they'll have an opportunity to talk with people that go to the center and learn what the pros are, but also what the cons are.
Thank you.
So is it specifically targeted to this particular issue, or is it more, or is it also just an open house for people to come down and learn more about the town?
Targeted to this issue.
Okay.
Of the need for a new
Okay.
senior center, a renovated senior center. So
Okay.
that's our underlying purpose.
Then
Well, it's a great idea because a lot of people who may be against the senior center have never been there.
Right.
So they have
Yeah.
no idea.
Right.
think when the library, when they were trying to get monies, support for an override, the visuals they had, I think, were very helpful.
Mhm.
Because people don't see the, like the HVAC system, the
Yes.
leaks in the roof and
Right.
all that kind of thing. People, they don't know about it. They just know they got these nice friendly people there at the library. And they don't know about the facility.
Yeah.
So we have some idea of the overall process, but we don't know who's doing what. Right? Or let's say the town meeting. And are we gonna be able to have something going out by next week?
We have a due date of March 19th?
Thought it was
20.
Matt say, Matt,
21st.
was it 21st? We have to submit whatever it is we're gonna write up, has to be into Matt for the 21st.
And that goes in a warrant, which
Well,
is,
that'll get, yeah, it's gotta go in the warrant, it's gotta be reviewed, and then it's gonna go for printing.
Yeah.
So that's what,
and then at the actual meeting, is there any discussion or talk or slides?
No.
no, so,
They've cut,
so the moderator has changed the policy on that. Reports are in the warrant at the moment, and that's unless the item is actually up on a warrant item, it's
Okay.
just a report,
21st.
so.
So maybe one of the things we could do is have this group assign a person or two to take responsibility for building whatever's gonna go into the warrant. I know that's slightly below, but it's not related to what we're talking about. Maybe that gets that done. And I think John's spot on. I think we have basically what we have at this point, which is great stuff. But that's what we work with.
Yeah, I think we have plenty of well, take a step back. I think we have plenty of material to draw from. But I don't think we should, I mean, we do have to add a little bit of dimension to process and time frame, because I think that's an important piece. But other than that, I wouldn't use the word, I wouldn't stress over what else we're gonna put in the warrant, because it's not, we don't have any time.
might I suggest we have somebody from Recalc and somebody from the COA work to put that together? Would that make sense? I mean,
I would be willing to do that. Actually, I have kind of a draft of what you're talking about that I'd be happy to share. That I put together for some of the community forums.
Mhm.
I'd be happy to share that with, from whoever here might be interested, but it basically is a summary of everything that's happened to date.
How big is it?
Hmm?
How long or how big is it? Is it one page or is it a lot of pages?
3/4 of a page.
Oh, great.
yeah.
And maybe we can take a bunch of the BH plus A material that already exists, and certainly the drawings in there later.
I was thinking a couple of the slides and a cover page letter would be probably all we really could do at the moment. And I think that would be, and slides are okay. There've been slide stuff gone in for reports in the past, so,
My slides are easier to read than
yeah.
letters.
And to your point too, I think you mentioned something about maybe a front of the building rendering as opposed to an aerial view. Do you think that would be more beneficial too, if Rachel could throw something together like that?
My only hesitation is that the presentation material thus far really hasn't given us any, what I would call architectural drawings at this
Yeah,
point.
so
It's
just
all kind of
aerial.
blocks, and I actually think in this case, the drawings that you were showing, for example, are much more relevant at this point.
Yes, a little more eye-catching when you see the
Well, yeah,
thing, but
yeah. But it would give folks an idea of, what sort of, ideas we are considering, and have to caveat the heck out of it, but I think that's would be something people would want to see.
And I think the approximate timeline that follows.
Oh, yes, yeah, with a time, yeah, with a timeline.
I
Yeah,
almost like to show what other communities have
Yeah.
and recently built as a comparison.
I think
I think that's the longer
Sure,
term thing,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No, but I think that's important, but
Right.
for the town meeting in the 1 week, so we're at Nancy.
Yeah,
Who's willing to volunteer on the recalc side? Jeez.
I can put a little bit of time into it. My
I
time's
just-
a little tight at the moment for
Yeah.
many reasons.
How much how much do you have? You have a page?
I have a page. I'd be happy to share it with everybody.
No, I understand. No, that's fine. I'm just trying to think how much time I have between now and, I'm actually traveling. I'm leaving on Wednesday next week. So,
Can you and I tag team?
That's fine.
Do it on the plane.
Yeah,
About three of us. That's all right. Or if you wanted.
I'm going to New Orleans. I'm not promising anything.
I'm not good at this, but
We have to, I think we can pick, how many, are we 7?
Yes.
We really
I
should.
can get involved if I have to as well too, Mark. I can participate.
Yeah, I think we gotta keep it to 1 or 2.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to,
I mean, I really think 4 slides and a paragraph
I agree.
kind of deal.
I think less is more, as
Yeah.
long as it's doing the right.
I think you need to, and if you could put, actually,
Right.
you could put,
Oh, yeah, this has to be shrunk dramatically.
you could put all 3 of the sites on one slide if you had
Oh,
to.
yeah.
Right.
That I actually recommend not doing.
Or.
No,
No, I give one for
Four
each.
sites. Or 4 diagrams, because the diagram that you showed doesn't have the gym at Pleasant
Right.
Street. So you need to also include the picture with the gym at Pleasant Street.
I think that was the last one that was presented.
Not here.
No, last year, on Saturday.
Oh, it could,
Yeah,
yes,
no,
yes.
she's, no.
I wouldn't do both, with or without, because, let's make them all the.
So the one that,
Yeah.
Rachel presented on Saturday, which had all the updated slide presentations, that's the one that we should use. And there were the 3 sites, the one in Pleasant Street did include the gym.
She included both in that presentation.
That may be true. But again, Paco, I think it's better to just do the 3 that are
Summary
comparative.
page, timeline page,
Right.
and the 3 diagrams.
And a couple of the slides that we were talking about from BH plus A.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
Yeah, from the initial slides there.
Yeah.
Why we're doing this.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And I think that this timeline piece is a really important one. Just thinking about, again, not their specific milestones, but more, okay.
She had a
real
higher
summary.
view, a summary of that.
And then I think we gotta take it out to November.
We need like a 1.5 year timeline slide, starting at the end of last year, going through, April of 2025.
Didn't she
Kind
have,
of.
did she have a timeline?
So, this is just one I happened to have with me.
Right, it's only for them.
slide, but it's over like 10 years. It's.
Oh,
it's-
yes, you're right.
It's there.
You're right.
We need something a little bit more, we need something between that and that.
Yeah, you're right.
Just focused on the next year or whatever.
Good.
Because that's what people want to see, I think. And we can say like May select board, that sort of thing.
It's the deck.
Part of that.
Yeah, part of the. Part of the, I don't have it. But I seem to remember a timeline. Of their products.
Yes. So oh.
Where'd it go? It was just popping up. There it is. Look at that. Pops right up for me. It knows me. So I think they're on 3.
I'm on AOL.
I think it's like, yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it was like around 40 slides.
Yeah, how quickly we can spoil.
I know.
Is that in the
These are all
beginning?
good slides.
I don't know if that was at the beginning or the end.
Did I see something?
Oh, was it there?
I thought it might have been there. There was, yeah.
Wait,
Is that?
you go back up two more, it has, I think it tells us what the, okay, right there, so recap timeline.
That's way up
Okay,
front.
so.
Front.
Yeah.
Right at the front. There it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one you guys are thinking of.
Yeah, so that's a little much. Can you go to the next one? Maybe the next one is what we want.
So we basically need to do a 2024, 2025
Yeah.
slide.
Oh,
Do you want me to keep going?
Is there one more or is that it? That's it.
that's it. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about.
But you can go to the next, to the BHNA one that Mark keeps putting up. I think it's the next slide. Keep going.
Keep going.
Right there.
Right. Yes.
Oh, well, yeah.
I think it's not, is there one more?
Yeah, there is, I think so.
No.
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 Back up two, sorry.
No worries.
But they,
So. I think I can, put together a summary of this and that. With the timeline that we're talking about, that would suggest. A May timeframe for a recommendation to the board. And then. A special town meeting in September.
So that assumes the schematic design phase over the summer effectively.
Right. So, yeah, so. from-
June, July, August,
June, July,
September.
September,
Yeah, it's gonna be
over.
tight.
Okay, so it's October, November.
yeah, the reason why I would say have it separate from the regular November town meeting, because we're gonna have the MBTA communities at that time, and I'm thinking that's gonna take a lot of time, maybe not.
I think it will.
Yeah.
A. That's the. Schematic. June, July. Yeah. So that means vote is probably December, Jan. Best case.
So the challenge with pushing it off, the challenge with trying to do it early is that. And I know Nancy has said this in the past, it's the give the community the time to digest it and communicate it and really, garner the support. I think if you try to push it too early into town meeting, you're gonna run into trouble. But
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about to the voters, but you're saying to town meeting as well.
I'm saying town meeting as well.
So you try to
I don't
put it into November.
I mean,
Are
people
you
could,
on town meeting?
yes, I'm on town meeting. I don't know. It could be wrong. People just show up on town meeting and vote. So.
So I would just say town meeting instead of special town meeting for the moment. And we assess if November is doable. And then to voters, that puts it, I think, into early next year.
Yeah.
Cause I don't think in any case you're gonna hit the November election. I think you're,
Oh, no, that's,
so I think at that point, it really doesn't matter.
No.
Cause you're in a special election at that point.
Almost a year from now. Exactly. Probably good.
and we should just touch base with the schools to see what their timeline looks like, just so that no one's surprised.
Okay, so we good on? That
So,
as far as the,
if you want, I'll take a shot at this page.
okay. And this has a summary. And Were you gonna,
I'll take some additional slides.
okay,
Can I-
So we should probably have one person who owns gathering it and getting it to
Sounds good.
by the 21st.
Nancy, what format is yours? Just a Word document or?
It's a Word document. I'm looking for them right now. I could just send them and you all could take a look at them and, but it does kind of highlight the process.
I have
Not
it
in any, it might be in too narrative form, so you would have to sit that.
Cool.
so once again, though, who's gonna be the,
I'll take ownership
okay,
of the presentation.
all right.
Thanks, Ron.
Sounds good.
All right, then we have the site criteria. I don't know what we're supposed to be doing with these. I know I certainly didn't have time to look at them. Oh,
Anna, do you have
until
the,
today, and I was,
do you have the spreadsheets that they presented on
Yep, so I have these, this is the most updated one that Joel sent on Tuesday with the updated site criteria.
okay. Does that have tabs on the sheet?
It doesn't allow, I PDF'd it, so I could just easily scroll down. So I think what the goal is, I think Mark said it, or maybe you, is to take these 36 and narrow them down to the 12 as a group. Maybe not like necessarily go over them in ranking right now, but narrow down the criteria and then bring it back to BH plus A.
well, I certainly wouldn't be ready to do that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are kind of like straightforward.
But it wasn't just.
I mean, a
narrowing down
surcharge for an
to 12.
oil
It
tank.
was a matter of combining some.
That
Well, so
match.
let me make sure I understand this because I've got the spreadsheet that you sent out that I came from him as well. So I understood this to be so the top of this spreadsheet that has 30 some odd criteria was what he's called the equal weight analysis. And so what he had said for this was, well, what we could do is we can take all of these criteria and we can add whatever we want to it. And then we can basically just try to do an assessment of each site against these individual criteria, not weighted, just purely numeric, 0, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, whatever. And then see at the end of the day, which of the three show up as the lowest, effectively the lowest score is his position. The other option that he presented, which is what's also at the bottom of the spreadsheet here, was the different weighted analysis, which is the piece underneath here that you have, where he took basically a dozen, and he I'll use the word concatenated, put together a number of the criteria above and said, okay, well, let's look at, hold on a second.
All right, so he's already done that.
Let's look at, area of the site, which is a more general piece, which maybe encompasses, 2 or 3 of the criteria up top. And let's generically talk about that, and then we assess it with a little different weighting score. So I think there are at least 3 different tasks that I see here. The first one is, do we have a preference of some sort between doing an individual weighting versus kind of a generic convert over to something a little bit more like this? And then even with this, we have to ask ourselves, is this a good enough list? Are we missing something in this? And then the third piece is how do we actually go through and rate these? What do we want to do for how we assess this criteria? So that, I think at least those are the 3 questions I have in my mind.
Well, so in it,
Okay, get back.
oh, sorry.
No, that's fine.
So I like this version rather than the previous version, which was, these 12 categories and you get a 30, 70 or 3, 7, and 10. I forget what it was. I think this is sort of the right approach to try and get the weighting categories and to rank them appropriately. The hard part is deciding whether, just as an example, number 8, wetlands and footpaths, is an equal weight category to urban design site costs. And that's how you make each one of these 12 things the same weight.
Well, they're graded, some are 14 to 20, some are 7 to 10. I didn't understand.
I
that.
just-
See if we agree with this.
Yeah, that's the key.
That's,
And I just didn't getting that now, so.
Yeah. So I think that's one challenge. The other challenge is on some of these, we don't know.
That's-
Actually,
that-
I don't know.
Right, when I take a look at that, that was my first thing as well.
Yeah.
No,
The floodplain's being a good example.
Almost like it's not-
yeah, exactly.
And maybe we should,
Even utilities, we don't know.
did BHA come up?
yeah, so maybe we should just take one step back on that. So we are absolutely not the bearers of all the knowledge to fill this out. So let's be clear. But I do think that the first step in this process for us is to try to make sure we flush out, okay, what are all the criteria that we would like to see assessed? And then try to come up with an approach for how we would then take these and assess them. And, you know, like I said, do we want to weight them in some ways or do we not? Because to your point, Michael, this is the first I'm seeing like site construction costs having a different weighting scale than the other ones, right? If you look at 9 versus the others. So I think 2 and 9 have more weight simply because they got broader point ranges that they've added. So that was I guess that was their way to emphasize those as stronger.
Parking got that same 14.
Yeah, so I mean, there's 10 different ways to slice this cat, right? You know,
Analogy.
yeah. What analogy? Cats have 9 lives. No, okay. So I do think that the first priority is to make sure we identify all the criteria that we think are relevant to
Well, how
incorporate.
did this get to 12?
So I think Joel, right?
Yes.
I think Joel just put this out and he said, this is an example of what I've done in the past for one of my
It's an
prior.
example.
Yeah, it is just an example. So this is not I wouldn't take this as the formal BHNA. This is the criteria you should use.
Mhm.
He was giving us an example. I would agree that he probably pulled it from work he's done in the past, so it's not completely irrelevant. But we may view it differently based on what we as a community want to emphasize.
Yes,
Can I make a comment? In a previous iteration of the criteria, it was much simpler. There were 2 sheets he was proposing. And the Council on Aging met on March 4th. We had a special meeting to just go over the criteria sheets. And we put together a summary of what we felt, just what John is saying, of what we felt were the most important or criteria that should be considered. We did not go into the rating scale at all.
Mhm.
We just discussed the specific criteria. And we put it together and
sent it to me and then I sent it to Rachel today.
yeah. So to John's point, we didn't really have the rating scale then anyways, and it kind of didn't make sense to us, so we just stuck with the criteria, if that's just helpful.
and did you prioritize the criteria or
No,
only?
we didn't.
Okay.
We just on a chart,
Mhm.
just listed all of the criteria that we felt it would be important to include in a site-based review.
Okay, so in fact, that you did prioritize in the sense that these are the things that are important.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And what we used was the very first site plan that BHNA sent out. But it took us 2 hours to go over each piece and talk about it and how would, you know, if we were rating it, what would we want on there? And we took some things off what was on Joel's, or BHA's, sample, because that's really what it was. It was a sample, much like this is a sample. And one of the things that we're gonna try to do now is we are gonna try to compare what we came up with what's on this iteration of a site review and see if just the broad categories are included in there. But we did not talk about weighting and that whole thing. I mean, that is a whole nother 2-hour discussion.
And I don't like the rating thing, this
No.
sample, you know, that spread. To me, when I weigh criteria like for value, when I'm hiring people, you know, you give it this a weight of 2 or 3, and then, you know, that kind of a thing as opposed to a range. Because then people are gonna have the range all, they're gonna, you know, someone gives it a 6 and someone gives it a 9. That skews it when you're looking at total points, because some people are high markers.
So when he presented this last meeting, he didn't have these ranges.
Mhm.
He just had numbers for each one. And he said, for example, you know, take the example of sufficient versus, you know, expansion or whatever. He would say like the median, the minimum would be a 3, the median would be a 7, and the maximum would be a 10. So he actually, when he did the last criteria, he didn't have the ranges at all. He just said, well, let me just say, if you pick this, this, or this, these are the numbers I'm gonna give it. And so it's a little bit of intrinsic weighting in the selection, not only of the particular criteria, but also the fact that it meets or doesn't meet that assessment. That's how we did it the last time. And I actually thought that was I would say I like that better than this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I actually like this a little better because, and I'll just say, you know, if you give something a 3 and then some other thing is also a 3, but one's a lot worse than
Right.
the other.
Or a lot more expensive, or
Well, the expensive can get covered
Right.
elsewhere, but
Right.
you know, if Pleasant Street really doesn't have enough parking, and for instance, Oakland Road maybe has just enough parking, you give them both 3s, there's no difference. And that was sort of a going back to the 1, 2, and 3 kind of thing, but just, I don't know about these ranges.
Yeah, no, I think that we probably need to, like, just interesting data point. So Jen and I did this, right? The whole thing.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at yours. I don't know if you looked at mine.
yeah, I did mine and then I looked at yours.
Did they
Same.
look similar?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And Jim, I had Jim in the office do it too in rec, yeah.
So between the equal weighting and their weightings, the rankings were pretty much the same as they came out. And it sounds like across 2 people,
Yeah.
the same thing happened.
That's oftentimes the way it works out. Just-
Yeah,
Yeah. And there were some things that I looked at and was like, oh, I don't know, 10.
right, yeah,
But most of them I was able to kind of say, okay, so this is a little different from that one. So I was able to, by having enough points to play with, I could make sure I didn't run into that problem of, well, you know, one is better than the other, but they're both, you know,
They're both 7.
3 or 7 or whatever the number is. You need a way to kind of play with it. So I would almost suggest that maybe we look at this and see, are there particular areas that are highest priority? General areas, not necessarily specific criteria, but general areas. Maybe that helps. And then we can come back and maybe they can layer that in and change these, it is parking and what are the 3 big ones here? Site construction, parking, and urban design, site context are all 20-point scale. Pretty much everything else is 10, the way they did it currently.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe we look at that and say, you know what? Agreed. funny, I rarely took the highest value. Actually, on some of the tens I did, but on the 20s, never did I take a high value.
Yeah, like if I was doing wetlands and floodplains,
Yeah,
then at the Pleasant Street Center, that would get a 10 because they don't have wetlands or floodplains.
right.
So,
And Oakland Road is unknown and Simon's Way is probably not as good. So yeah, so my Simon's Way, that got a 1. Oakland Road, it got a 5. And Pleasant Street, I'll only give it a 6. I'll give it more points. Okay.
See, with something like parking quality, the site has sufficient parking and can provide overflow parking for large events. See, I don't even like that being in there, but you can't build for peak. I mean, you have to have alternative.
Well, no, but that would be a criteria where, for instance, Simon's Way would have.
When's big.
plenty of
Yeah,
parking.
much.
Yeah.
It's not an
Better.
issue, and clearly parking is an issue at Pleasant Street.
Yeah,
And I put Oakland in the middle between. All right, Oakland probably would have enough.
Depending on how you do it, you might take advantage of the high school parking and all that.
Yeah, when it's available.
Certain times, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but so I think that the broader scale helped, I guess is what I'm saying. And maybe what we can do is talk about where the priorities as we see them even here now, just to get started. Are there areas that are really like, everybody is like, yes, absolutely, that's a biggie. Maybe that would help us. I also did a cut at trying to take the equal weight analysis and I cut it in half, like not that, just, I got it down to 16 or 17 out of the.
I mean, these categories,
Yeah, I mean, literally, I just sat here a couple seconds ago and just
yeah,
kind of, ownership, for example, we own them all, off.
Right.
Easement and deed restrictions, off.
okay, I'm gonna cross them off.
1 or 2 story option, I think they're all the same.
Yep,
That's off.
Yep.
Location,
Pleasant Street's taller,
yeah, that's 3 floors.
because it's the garage, and
because and you got actually down +2 conceivably.
so then the gym starts off at the second floor.
Yeah, so we should capture that somehow, that's a little different than the others.
It is,
And the others are actually identical.
the others are the same, right?
Yeah, okay, so we have to find some way to capture that.
I mean, Oakland, because of the site, they might not actually be level, but
So they're saying from the work they've done so far, topography is less of a challenge than they initially suggested.
that was my view when I did my site visit. It just, let's get the construction going.
Get the hard hits out, get the shovel.
Yeah. So they have some things here on there's proximity for EMT.
Yeah.
Separate from proximity from police. So
put that together.
Honolulu is probably fine since they're, not that far apart, right? 100 yards apart, 20 yards
I
apart.
think we rolled it together into public safety.
Yeah, I think that works great.
The areas for nature and wetlands and could that be collapsed as well too? So
Yeah, I think that, I think between like 20 and 25 is a way to simplify that. All right, so 20 is subsurface water, wetlands, insects, nature, floodplains, habitat restrictions.
Those are all really one issue in my
I think
mind.
so.
What do you call it?
Except some of them are negatives and some of them are positives. Like being.
Right.
Being close to
Yeah.
nature is a positive, being a wetland, it could be a big negative.
So maybe you have a environment positive and an environment negative. Something like that. But that takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and brings it to 2.
Right, I thought it was
Yeah.
overbuild if you want, but
Yeah. Yeah, that works. Surcharge for site clearing, I think for Pleasant Street actually is the bigger issue, right? Because you got demolition. Oil tank removal, Is there an oil tank at Pleasant Street?
No, I don't think, so. If there is, it's been there forever when it was a fire department.
Yeah,
But I think it was taken out. I think my company took it out to take.
oh, interesting. I think it's been running on gas.
I say there's
It's
gas.
Yeah.
Okay, so for example, that's not an
It
issue.
was a gasoline tank there at one time.
Yeah.
We can take that.
Acquisition of adjacent sites. So
What does that mean?
So if you look at the Oakland Road one and you see that one house that kind of is a little cut out. There's a house, so the property is, big clump here, private house and clump here. So the possibility would be, I guess, of would the town entertain buying the house, trying to buy the house. I have no idea if the
Wow.
person would have any interest in that or not. But if that were to be something that we deemed a requirement, that would be a big cost. I mean, that's north of $1 million cost, I'm sure.
Do we?
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Incident, I do have the list, but I didn't bring it in with me. I'm sorry.
I have an
It's the. Lack of of selling the Pleasant Street Center, a factor that goes into considering sites
Or renting out.
or renting.
Yes, it is.
Using it for other public purposes.
That's a
It's
criteria.
got value.
That's one of
It's value add.
Yeah, it's number 3 on the second reading. It says temporary COA space required.
No, that's not, that's not what you,
Point.
yeah.
I mean, if we go to Oakland Road, suddenly the town owns Pleasant Street. It's a big asset. It's worth.
That's
Oh,
what
yes,
we talked
yes.
about more before.
Yes.
Yeah, talk about,
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
you're using it for something else.
So I think we actually haven't captured that well currently. We should.
It should go in the list.
Really quickly, there is a huge in-ground tank at the Pleasant Street Center on the corner of Pleasant Street. And when it fills, it floods the basement. So there is a huge couple 1,000-gallon tank underneath.
Oh, so that's a water,
Tank.
that's a stormwater tank?
It's like a big cistern. I think it was from the fire department era. But
Oh,
the
wow.
problem
keep
is
that
now, if they don't pump it when it rains regularly, the basement floods. So that would have to be taken care of.
John, was that the gas tank?
No,
No, you're saying.
Gas tank out.
Oh, system.
The water system.
Yeah, so that actually sounds like, it's not wetlands or floodplain, but it's in this, actually, it's same category, right?
Yeah.
It's a water issue.
Yeah.
So we gotta capture that the water mitigation.
And what,
Yeah.
on wetlands, we have to get permission from the state as well. It engages us in a whole other approval process, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it affects timeline potentially as well.
So we think Simon's Way with the markings we have, we're outside of that. We're clear of it by sufficient boundaries,
Good.
hopefully to be validated.
Good.
I think I don't know about Oakland Road at all.
I don't think there's any well.
Okay.
I don't think it's,
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think it's in a floodplain or
Yeah.
no conservation land. I don't think.
Yeah, obviously, we'll get the right answer, but I don't think it's an issue. And then on Pleasant Street, so we've just identified this issue,
Flooding issue.
yeah, and we know that there's water around. So, yeah, so that's an important criteria. All right, so how should we capture this? Are you adding,
Yes.
adding, subtracting? Awesome.
Yep.
So what about, so I think you mentioned public service, public safety as an item. But the concept of, people able to be downtown and, it wasn't, I know the discussion at the thing was, oh, we want to be close to town hall. Well, it wasn't really town hall. It was being downtown so you could run your errands, you could go to CVS, you could do that. So the concept of.
Dollar store.
Yeah. The concept of having, the ability to be, walkable or within the downtown area and have access to other services and,
Walkability score.
well, it's not even,
A little bit.
Yeah, there is
That's how towns are valued.
proximity for user access.
And Nancy?
What that-
Yeah,
Yeah.
we called it proximity to community resources
Yeah.
and services.
yeah.
You could even put business center in there if you wanted to.
Didn't one of the UMass study things came out that wasn't a big criteria?
I think so.
Yeah.
But at this recent forum, though, it seemed that people were,
Right, but you're getting a certain.
Yeah.
segment, Yeah.
The discussion was that one's proximity and walkability depended on where you live. So if you lived out on Franklin Street, you know, but if you lived over on Summer Ave, that's a whole different ball of wax. So, you know, whether that's a criteria, you would want that as a criteria.
well, I think location's important, though.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think
You
so.
don't think so?
Everybody's gonna go by car.
Pardon me?
Everybody's gonna go by car. If we went to.
Senior citizens, I
What other
thought transportation
Transportation of some.
is a big issue, though.
We were discussing this actually at the Winchester Center the other day, a bunch of Reading people. And the consensus there was it doesn't make any difference where it is.
I don't,
Yeah, that was a good slide.
Another one, but public transportation to/from center. You know, that could be provided by the town, that could be bus service provided by the state.
But we do have the one bus line in town.
Yeah.
Can I bring just kind of it's an adjacent point just to come back to later, but it relates to transport. When Chris and I went to Randolph, was it Chris? They seem to know how to get a bunch of grants, and some money from AARP and a bunch of other things. And they, you know, knew some stuff. At some point, we got to think about how can we find a resource to help us find some of that stuff.
Yeah, so actually our volunteer coordinator is taking a grant writing class right now, and I think Chris is too, or thinking of, or when he has free time.
Janet and myself are working on grant writing classes.
Yeah, but we talked to them a lot because they have a lot of transport there, partially because it's a community center also, but they had a bus line and all sorts of other things going on to get people there.
Who is Kim Hardenschlager when you need her? She was great at writing grants.
Ben was too.
So maybe she wants to volunteer. Okay, so that's so transportation to and fro.
yeah.
Do you remember who it was that?
What else? What else is actually, this is great. What else is not, I think we want to push a little bit harder.
Yeah, I think the piece that I have, and I want people's feedback on this, because I was thinking, when we actually went through this the first time, I had written this down. Like the usability of the building itself as it relates to the needs that we're trying to meet. Now, I know obviously we've had a lot of presentations on what we think each of these are supposed to be. And for the two buildings that's supposed to be the same, that may be a moot point, but there was a lot of feedback. There were questions about, well, what are the differences between the one at Pleasant Street versus the others, and how much of a difference do they actually make? And I think it's worth trying to make an assessment of that. Only because I continue to have in the back of my mind this fear that we end up selecting Pleasant Street and people say, why did we do this again? Why are we constraining ourselves to the same, things that we were complaining about to begin with? So I would like to have some way of integrating that kind of concept into our assessment. I mean, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, but I definitely felt there was a perspective that there is good or bad. And as much as people said, oh, I really like, this location and it's great. I would hate to be in this buyer's remorse position,
So
5
new
years from
versus
now.
refurb
Yeah.
Right.
criteria almost.
Nancy and I have been talking a lot about that, and we were thinking that something needs to be added to this. It's the site's appropriateness for what we would prioritize as our preference among the buildings. It's sort of like if you could take the buildings and just put them anywhere, Oakland Road might be your favorite, but that might not be the best site. But you need to measure on those two things. It could be a great site, but not really accommodate the flow of building that you want as well as another one would. So somehow those two things have to factor into this And we've been looking at things like literally how many rooms do we end up with here versus there? And it does also get into the community center versus just senior center. But all those layers need to be thought about a little
But
bit.
doesn't the architectural design take that into consideration? In other words, you tell them what we already looked at, size of rooms and this kind of thing, and they're supposedly incorporate that in all three locations.
So
But they're different, Pleasant Street in particular.
Well, Pleasant Street, yes, Pleasant Street is the one where the
Right.
most.
I think that's the point I would be, that I was concerned about. I certainly heard it raised by folks at at the two meetings that I went to, is that they, so first is this concept of flow, as you mentioned, that, you got 3 floors at Pleasant Street, you got smaller rooms here, you don't necessarily have that, the concept of what the other buildings provide in terms of an area that is truly, okay, this is senior use, this is more community use. It's a lot more difficult to kind of see that in the existing Pleasant Street Center designs. And maybe that's really the only issue. I don't know, but I think it's an important enough issue, in my opinion. I think it's an important enough issue to capture in one of the criteria. I guess that's the point, because it's been brought up. I would say particularly by COA, but I think other people have brought it up as, what do we really want this to look like and be, and how is it going to work for the community? And it does actually go, as you said, towards, is it really, conceptually enough to be a community center on top of a senior center? And again, I don't have the answer to that question, but I'd like to see us try to capture that in this somehow.
Piece of that too is, Pleasant Street's constrained and the others are more purpose-built, and in fact, they're identical, right? They're just-
You're gonna be relying on the elevator at Pleasant Street a lot more than the other two sites. So
It reminds me of what they said at Burlington, which had a lot of things for it. They said, don't ever go into a school because it was already
Constrained, yeah.
Old design.
constrained, yes. It wasn't the flow because this wasn't the purpose for which it was constructed. And I think at Pleasant Street, it is even more constrained.
Right.
It's tighter.
And by the way, we may end up saying in the end that when we look at cost and all the other site issues, that it still may be the choice that where we go with. I'm not trying to sway that choice. I just think it's important to add that as a criteria to make sure people understand that we are looking at this, not just all these other wetlands and parking and everything like that, but the actual building itself, the thing that we want it to be. How does that rank up against the 3? It just happens to be not by chance, but by design, that 2 of them are the same. And so, okay, that makes that easy. Question is, how much value do you attribute to that versus the constrained piece that you're going to get in the other area?
So is that wrapped up in, urban design and context?
There is a document too that Rachel sent out that I could resend that gives all of the buildings and the square footage, and she has talked quite a bit about what square footage a senior center should have versus a community center. So she's very thoughtful about the spaces and the planning. So I can resend that to everyone because I think it's a really good document and it compares all the sites.
Okay, Nancy's been
The
waiting.
program space.
I was just gonna say, we had this same problem when we did our
Yeah.
discussion on March 4th.
Yeah.
And what we did was we separated it out. So we looked at the site criteria, but then we have a whole nother set of criteria that we develop for the actual building and layout and rooms and all those kinds of things, and because otherwise it was, it didn't seem to flow. So, if people are interested, we'd certainly share, how we divided that out and what we thought was important. To John's comment, we had that, it was really a very similar thought process. And the only way we could do it was to divide it into two separate. But if it could be summarized in the site criteria as 1 or 2 points, that would be fabulous
To
too.
at least the relative ranking of the three, in terms of those kinds of measures as well.
Well, to me, it's the thing that they don't have here. Trying to look at this. They have facilitates multi-generational use, but it doesn't say facilitate, use as a senior center.
Right.
That's nowhere captured there that I see anyway.
Right.
We would hope that that would be a given.
Yeah,
I don't blame you thinking of
I mean, you're saying if it,
Yeah, that's what.
But there is issue of flow and.
Yes.
That makes
Yeah.
that Pleasant Street Center.
the design is, yeah.
Yeah, and if you have the chart also that shows the current space and the potential space at Pleasant
Yes,
Street.
that's what I was talking
That's what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
can
the-
send
the-
it out.
The mega room, whatever it's called, multi-purpose or whatever, I believe that's the smallest at Pleasant Street because that's all it can be.
2,300 instead of 25, I think, so that rough, give or take a little.
Yeah, and the kitchen too.
Yeah, and the kitchen, I think, is another one got constrained.
If Jenna has our 2 charts, and we'd be happy to share them with this group if you're all interested, just to kind of
Sure.
get an idea. That's all.
And they're both work in progress.
Yeah.
We left it with, let's all cogitate on it some, now that we've kind of done our first brain dump, but
Now,
they are 2 very different lists of things to think about.
question, how far down the road do we want to get tonight on this? Because they took them a couple of hours. And
2 hours and 15 minutes to tell you.
But who's counting?
Was a good points that we've captured. And I sent Rachel the COA's feedback from their first meeting, and then I could send her all of your feedback and maybe share it with you, John, about everything that I compiled, or send it out to the whole group.
That's a whole group, yeah.
And then if people could write back and say, oh, you missed this or this or this, and then I'll send it to Rachel. And then she'll probably review it with us at our Thursday meeting.
Yeah, I think,
You have time to sleep.
No, neither do any of you. so. You're doing this for free. It's my job. But, thank you.
should we make a decision on what method we like?
You mean the equal weight versus the,
Page 1 versus page 2?
I really didn't hear anyone say equal weight, given these criteria, because they're just insects. I mean, that's an interesting point, but it's not equal to construction cost. So it's more what kind of weight system, and Mark was saying, and I guess Jenna too, that it was helpful to have more of a range. So other people on that point?
I think it would be best that way.
Pardon?
I think it would be best that way to have the range.
Okay. And would the range be as significant as what they have here, or?
That I'm not sure.
Guess we could dig in a little bit in our Thursday meeting and ask why these are rated the way that they are. Maybe he can give us more feedback and a big,
This Thursday meeting?
with BH plus A, yeah. I meet with them every Thursday
okay. So
with
it's good.
a few other folks, like Chris is there and
Something.
yeah, and Matt. So if we kind of just meet tomorrow and get some more feedback on the intention of the rating scale, and we can have him summarize that for all of us, and then I can send that out to the group. Have a better understanding of it.
And to me, if you would ask them, like, say, temporary COA space required. Now, that's where the range doesn't make sense to me. Either it is or it isn't. So, 7, 10, what's the? So I would look at that anyway. It's not necessarily, that one jumped out at me. We need to have a range on all of them.
So the value of the range is to distinguish between the different locations, right? So. for
Right,
example,
but is that gonna vary as far as temporary COA space?
So it's kind of yes, no on that one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying
Yeah.
on that one.
Yeah. Most of the others, I think. Other than wetlands and floodplains, but you've already changed that. Yeah.
I almost think that could be put into a cost perspective, because really that's what it's referring to. So I mean, there is the issue of, you know, the logistics of making all of that happen. And I don't want to minimize that by any stretch of the imagination, but purely speaking, it's a cost issue.
Mhm.
Right?
And it's the only way, if it's Oakland Road or Simon's Way, then it's not needed. So that's cost issue on that side of it. If it's,
Yeah, no, no, I agree. There will be some of the, like I said, for each of these, there'll be some where you'll be like, yeah, they are kind of, you know, yes, no issues. And for yes, no issues, I would agree. They shouldn't necessarily be rankings. You should be able to figure out how do you incorporate them in the other pieces if they're just purely yes, no answers.
Yeah.
So that one, for example, I would say, okay, it's a yes, no answer. So it's really just a cost issue.
Where would you put that? Oh, under.
I put it under construction cost
Okay.
because it's,
Yeah.
you have to incorporate it there.
Yeah.
So one of my questions is traffic conditions. Like, that really seems
yeah, I didn't know.
like a non.
Well, like at the high school.
I think it's back to cost.
It might,
Well, no, say at the high school, if you're gonna do something at 7 to 9, you're competing with a high
if you
school.
go to Simon's
traffic.
Way, you have
Hockey.
traffic.
Yeah, but
And,
the high school's a big issue, I think, with the traffic.
yeah, but I go to the Y up there and yeah.
There's traffic
certain times of
issues.
day, you have to.
But these are seniors, remember?
Well, downtown.
Not you, not you, the other seniors.
At night is traffic too.
Where, pardon?
Downtown in the evening is very
Traffic.
trafficy too, yeah.
I don't know, I just think the high school.
There's a thing going on.
And in the morning, yeah.
Simon's Way is having an argument with the on the Little Treasures parking, I know lately.
Right, sorry.
Wasn't there a
So going
traffic
into
study?
Simon-
now?
But they were,
There will be,
Oh, will be.
BHNA were out last week doing the traffic study. I know she was at Pleasant Street Center and she was gonna go take a look at the other two sites.
Yeah.
So they looked at that last week.
At different times of day,
I'm not sure at different times of day.
that really would be important.
Yeah, but they were out last week to at least start that study.
There is a safe schools grant that we got
Yes.
for Oakland Road. It's not just the intersection of Birch Meadow and Oakland, it's all the way up Oakland.
Huh?
So it is some amount of money to look at traffic there and to improve it somewhat. I'm sure that this would require a lot more, but it's at least a start to that question. And I think they moved the driveway.
yes, they did.
For that reason
At
also.
Oakland, yeah.
Because of the turn,
Yeah,
it made the turn easier.
Also at Oakland Road, most of our program doesn't start until 9 o'clock. We only have one thing that starts at 8:30 right now, so if we kept that and looked at the schedule for any of the sites, most things don't start until 9.
And then the ending, like say 3 o'clock when they let out.
That's gonna be the harder one, is the afternoon, that 45 minutes when schools get up.
And Simon's Way has one way in, one way out. Right? It has the Little Treasures and it has Killam.
And it has what?
Kill them, the school.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's diagonally across, just about.
So you're saying this.
Same traffic, it's like traffic situations.
So we should,
Yeah,
St. Athanasius.
But that's Haverhill Street. I mean, yes, there's some parking on Haverhill, but not a lot. Most of it's on the Charles Street side.
Yeah.
No.
Killing job.
Nope.
And there's a light there, which helps to some
Get
extent.
the church there as well too, so,
St. Athanasius.
yeah.
It is a busy, our kids went to Little Treasures. It is a busy,
It is, that's a nightmare to.
Really?
Yeah, no, yeah.
it's a scary road right there. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not trying to sway anything, but I'm just letting you know my experience. It's very fast.
Even the entrance to Simon's Way is very narrow.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, you're going into a site, it's narrow.
Yeah.
Narrow.
It's like a road into an ice rink.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't, doesn't mean you can't widen the road either, or
I don't know.
you get, once you get in.
None of these sites
Yes,
are
Perfect.
perfect.
I mean,
Which is exactly why we're going through.
the street center and people are parked on both sides of the roads, you can't,
Oh, and it's just a single.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can just see someone taking
And
someone's
that's
camera off
where
right
it's
now.
coming from. A lot of things, it's when I first thought about traffic, it's, you know, could the van get in there easily and drop people off and
Mhm.
get to the front door and turn around and get out of there? And all the sites have issues with that.
Yep.
Some are better than others. And
Yeah, so access was one of them, right?
Yes, yeah.
That was on
I
there.
don't worry about the high
Like
school.
access and egress.
I worry less about traffic at Pleasant Street. I have heard a lot of concerns among the older our clientele about getting into a parking deck. So I think traffic is.
Right, a parking.
Garage.
Especially that design that they had,
Right.
there was one way in.
Yeah.
Another
You
way.
can't Go in the other way, yeah.
So I think two sites have a traffic issue, one site has a parking.
Have to have an attendant or something like that.
They had to haul a car out of there the other day with somebody,
Oh, yeah, it went down the ramp.
yeah,
Drove down the ramp.
don't know how that happened.
Almost made it.
The ramp.
The only other piece of feedback I have, I still do like the idea of kind of a general approach with this, that Joel presented here,
I do.
kind of the top thing. I actually was, as I was just thinking about this, I actually think all of these, however many if we did decide on this, however many we have, everyone gets assessed the same, 1 to 10. And then what you do is you set weightings at the overall level. Because that way people have the same conceptual view of how to assess it. And then if you say, hey, the location of the parking, that's a 1, but the parking quantity, that's a 2. And so you could weight some of these a little differently,
I think that's a great idea.
After the fact.
after well, not after, but at least that way you're not confusing the assessment process.
Yep.
Yeah, 'cause this is.
That we're using the same criteria as we look at each of these, and we're not thinking, oh, I gotta do this one 1 to 20 and this one 1 to 10 and this one
Yeah.
1 to 5 and I don't,
It's a good idea.
Like,
so, and then that way that also gives us the ability after we put them all together is to do a ranking and prioritization, which I think would probably be worthwhile when we get to that point. And then we could use that and say, okay, the top 3 become 2s, the middle ones are 1.5 and the bottom ones are 1. It's whatever. I mean, whatever process we want to come up with.
and would we want to have an explicit mapping of this stuff in this?
So, I mean, just looking at this, just like what we just did, I think we kind of did that in our heads.
Yeah, I, in my head.
It would actually, you know what, maybe it would be worth just doing
Going
that
through it.
exercise and saying, okay, let's make sure all of these that are relevant are covered. And then that'll also identify any that are truly are missing.
Right.
Whether those ones that are missing, like, ownership, okay, who cares, right? That might not be an unreasonable thing to do.
And it might help us decide how much weight.
Yeah, if there's 5 criteria listed under 1, that might be a more important one than one that just has 1. Yeah. I like that idea.
Now, how do we account for the issue that was, I think Nancy or Marilyn both talked to about flow within? That's
Yes.
not on here now.
Yeah, I put that as a star to ask
Okay.
PX plus A.
I think that's a, significant issue to take a look at.
Yeah, I don't think BH&A was necessarily expecting that we were gonna turn around and hand them this exactly on a silver platter and say, here it is, go use it.
All right.
But we are gonna have to do some more work on this.
Okay. John, so your recommendation was like a 1 to 10?
Whatever so I have two recommendations.
Yeah.
Two recommendations. The first one is, I think we should stick with a smaller list
Mhm.
like this.
Yeah.
And that for each of them, we just do a 1 to 10 scale and then prioritize the total list and do some relative weightings. I like Michael's idea, which is to help us figure out which ones we should do. We should go back to the big list and try to break them up to see how they allocate out against these.
And maybe even suggest that the weights we could assign would be 1, 1.5, 2.
Something like that.
Something just to constrain it, so somebody doesn't get a 4 suddenly.
Right.
And also, you have to make sure not everything ends up with the same weight, because
Well, you
what's the
could,
point?
you could go crazy with it and say, okay, let's rank them 1 to 12 and number 1 gets 0.025, number 2 gets 0.5, number 3, whatever.
Well, I would imagine construction cost has to be pretty high on the list.
Yeah,
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 I expect that.
Automatically, I mean, that's.
right.
Big driver, that's for sure.
Chop change.
I'm gonna turn into a pumpkin shortly.
That clock's an hour behind.
I know it's an hour behind.
So is everybody on board with that, like a 1 through 10, with what we come up with? And then weight it afterwards with John recommended?
I kind of like that idea too.
Okay. I'm saying,
And shoot for
Nancy,
12,
what about-
12 criteria?
Do you agree? I see your hand.
Oh, Yeah, and I was just gonna say that we can share this concept with the COA members because they have this latest spreadsheet, and that would be a good way to approach, so we get a consensus.
okay, all right,
So action for this.
yes,
I know you've taken a lot of notes on this stuff. I know we have a BH&A tomorrow at 1:30.
Yep.
So, I don't know if I was gonna say, I don't know if I'll have a chance to do that other piece we just talked about, but maybe we could ask BH&A to help us do that as well.
Yeah,
That would be good.
I'll probably just end up giving them all of the suggestions and having them compile something new again. And working off of that.
now, so we're good on that. I'm looking at the time, I'm looking at the agenda items, and I don't know if some can be put off,
Kind of looks like you guys talked about it.
communication plan update and discussion. Or John, go.
Well, we really haven't done anything further on that from a recalc perspective.
Do we need to, apart from what we talked about doing, for the town meeting?
That is, yes, no, clearly that is another step, but I'll recycle us back a little bit. When we first restarted, and I'm not throwing you under the bus, by the way. But I had kind of recommended that we kind of move a lot of the communication stuff off to COA, which
Yeah.
actually they've already kind of taken.
yeah, lead.
Done. So what they were just talking about, the April and May open
A
things.
couple other things.
So I think we should try to support them because recalc, so your next agenda item, recalc is gonna sunset. So we're gonna go away. So in reality, we need to kind of find a way to make sure this doesn't stop.
Recognized.
John, Marilyn wants to.
Oh, yep, now.
Just one point, I agree with you totally, but I've been like writing the monthly drafting, and Karen Janowski and I work on it together, the letters to the editor, and so far it's been senior center needs a senior centers, because that's kind of all COA can say at this stage. But if we go with combined community center, senior center, we will need someone speaking to the community
That's a good
center
point.
perspective in those communications. And we'll need to work together, which I trust we can do, but I'm not mentioning it in the current ones because I'm trying not to support anything, but from the COA perspective right now, we're kind of limited by definition to council on aging, to senior center issues. And I'm trying to write them just to inform people about things, and I don't know how many people read that. I've told some people go right for it. That's not me, but we will need a recal or something to get the broader perspective if and when we get to that point, that that's the choice.
Like when's rec get involved?
Yeah, the recreation committee's been involved in the programming charrette, and we've been updating them on what's going on, but they haven't seen a formal presentation or anything from BH. But they can be engaged, and we can get you in touch with the chair of the recreation committee.
But I think the recreation committee is gonna be the key.
Yeah,
There is gonna be an intergenerational component.
Sure.
So just like the council is taking up the senior center.
Yep.
As well as, that was part of our charge as well, seniors first, but then the intergenerational as well.
and you've got your own lists of people that you can contact that we can capitalize on and things like that. So it needs to be a unified thing once we figure out what the unity is.
So I think your point is right, that obviously the communication we're going to do for town meeting is part of this. So all of these design charrettes, all these meetings really are communication.
Yes.
So, I mean, let's take credit for some of the things that we are actually doing.
Yeah.
But and we're certainly through the April, early May timeframe, putting together the recommendations and going through that. That's going to be another
It's gonna be a
piece
big.
of communication. I do have one question, and I only ask it because I have not obviously been able to spend any time on this at all, and that is the site visit work. Where are we with that? Is there anything on that we can include in our report to town meeting, other than just
Next
that
item.
we are also doing site visits and we'll have some more information?
Yeah, what do we,
I'm just curious. I know, I'm sorry, Jenna.
Yeah, I kept reaching out about setting up different visits, and it just wasn't working.
Happening.
People's schedules, so
How many have we done? We've gone through a couple already.
probably 5 or 6.
So, I mean, yeah,
a good
again,
timeline.
take credit for it,
Yeah.
right?
Then, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if have we,
Burlington.
you put together the spreadsheet on?
Yeah, I don't think it's been used.
No, okay.
Maybe 5.
But it'd be good to put that together so we have at least what we've done, right? If that's,
Yeah, I did the Burlington one, and
I mean, even if the answer is we only get to 5 or 6, I still think it's a win, right?
Totally is.
Yeah. So. Okay, well, just something to think about for the
We should
communication.
include the site visits that were done previously as well, too.
Yeah,
Like, where's site visits?
Right.
So,
But in where, to include in where?
just in the total.
total, yeah.
Right.
Oh, total. Yeah.
Recalc as of today has now completed 18 site visits,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, I think that's worth it.
Before you head out, when should we meet again?
Yeah, so the next meeting we have I think it needs to be a joint COA recalc meeting with BH&A presenting cost. So it's got to be not next week, the week after.
Good Friday.
And if people could give a range, a couple of dates, so that
Oh, okay.
sharing it with the COA.
Here's my nightly schedule.
Nightly schedule.
Yeah.
How about time wise too? What's a good,
The friend,
when does the COA, what time is it 7? What time? do you
maybe at
usually meet?
6:30.
6:30.
6:30?
Somebody did?
Or Wednesday, the 27th, kind of like tonight, but in 2 weeks.
Works with me.
Well, what days,
It's a Wednesday.
so either, if we do Wednesday, can we do 6 again?
You gonna serve supper this time?
I
Pardon?
suggest.
You gonna serve supper this?
Pizza.
I gotta go home to 3 meetings. That's starting at 8, 9, and 10, so, you know.
I suggested 6 for a COA meeting, and a couple people, they're working.
Mhm.
So they said 6:30 was a little tight, but 6, it would be very difficult.
That possible?
6:15.
No, 6:30 was okay.
6:30, right.
6:15 is
It wasn't even,
Want to get as much.
it was just kind of acceptable.
So,
I'm fine with 6:30.
And that's a joint meeting?
Yeah, I think it needs to be a joint
Yeah.
meeting.
Now, you were looking for another date too, just in
Well,
case.
and of course, my phone's out of.
And maybe if they know it's just gonna be one meeting, they can be flexible with the 6 o'clock this time around.
Well, again, I'll be flexible on my side. I will
We'll go with
we
6:30.
do 6:30. I might have to do it remote then, but I think the question is we need to make sure Rachel's available
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Another reason for another date as well.
Yeah,
Just
just in
we
case.
picked, or
The 27th. How about what are people's schedule on Thursday, the 28th? Are there other meetings?
I'm a no-go.
Thursday.
So that's right. You're back at spring break's over?
Spring break's over.
I'm sorry.
Monday?
Yeah. I can't do Mondays.
6th.
As of the moment, there's a select board meeting scheduled.
Which one is the Thursday?
We can't do Thursday.
Oh, okay, good.
Wednesday the
I've got something at Symphony Hall that night.
So we're kind of stuck with the 27th.
Would you, is the?
Well, for me, that's.
That's a Wednesday?
The following week, is the following week too late? Or-
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, I think we really need to meet that last week in March and get this in front of people. Because if we really are gonna put together a recommendation and use April as a time to put this in front of people, we have to have a discussion amongst ourselves first. I mean, I've said this like a broken record. Either we're all on the same page or this is dead on arrival.
Yep.
So we need that time to communicate and listen and understand as best as we can, because as soon as these numbers get out there, we're gonna get bombarded with questions. And we'd better be ready to answer them. So I would rather us be together on that than
Okay,
kind of off, and I don't want to wait.
but what happens if Nancy can't get a quorum for the 27th?
Well,
Well, let's,
what day of the week is it?
Wednesday.
It's a
My
Wednesday.
phone just died.
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday, the
how
27th.
many people do you need?
Or 6, we're 4 and 6.
Just out of curiosity, do I count for both on a quorum?
You did.
Yes.
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 You better come.
So let's go with the 27th, and I will do some asking the COA members.
Okay.
I mean, the only other option that week, I hate to even suggest it, is Friday.
Is that Good Friday?
Can we have drinks?
Is that Good Friday?
Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't.
we don't know.
No, I don't.
Good Friday?
This,
I think,
Yeah, I can't.
yeah, it is.
Never mind.
The 29th is Good Friday, yeah.
You're busy.
And Monday, the
I have a few
25th.
meetings in Good Friday.
Monday, the 25th, you can.
I mean, if the 27th doesn't work, maybe April 1st, which is a Monday.
I thought someone said they.
So I can't.
Few Mondays.
I can't do Monday nights at all. I can't do Monday nights, Thursday nights, every other Tuesday night. Sorry.
Wednesday, the 27th it is. We'll make-
she'll make us so.
we'll make it.
Okay.
Her baby, she'll make it.
Remaining tasks for recount before sunset.
you remember who it was?
So the
And is-
tasks relate, I think, to transportation,
Oh.
communication, finance.
Yeah.
I think that's it, right? So it's updates on what's going on with that, anything we found. I mean, we did learn something about
But he just like,
grants.
Right, but
Project
that
coordinators to
really
be trained to,
goes back to the reports of the visits, right?
yes, and we also, remember, we had kind of the smaller groups that were gonna come back and say, oh, here's what we learned about finances, here's what we learned about transportation.
Yeah.
Those haven't.
But we were
those have
fortunate.
a bit.
We were actually, hoping some of the site visit info that we asked about would help us in that. So that's why I asked about the site visits. So.
I don't know did we get paper back from any mini sites?
Well, when I went, I took notes on to Needham and Burlington.
Yeah.
And then I compiled them onto like my notes. And then I don't know about what it's done.
Yeah.
So,
There were four things. It was programming.
Yeah, programming is kind
finance,
of, go to them and kind of this.
Programming, finance and transportation. Those were the three areas that, which I do think we should.
Programming,
Finance, transportation, and
Yep.
well,
Well, the fourth group was the feasibility.
Yes.
So-
Exactly.
And that's obviously taken center stage for obvious reasons, but we can't, we should, finish that piece of it, I would think.
When do we?
yeah.
June 30th.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, I actually have the.
Really?
June 30th, 2024, on or before.
So, we're ready?
Do you think it's appropriate to extend that through September, October? There's,
I think we should talk about that at the next meeting, if that's what people think, and if there are specific tasks to get
Right.
done.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, sorry, I'm 30.
All in favor? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, folks.
Yeah.